We're going to look at the manufacturers first, and we're going to look at the big three and see where they wind up. GM is right about average right now. So if you take all of GM's vehicles, all the different brands, they're 4% worse than average in the average range. Chrysler is also in the average range, not quite as good as GM. Ford is 63% worse than average, and that is the average Ford and Lincoln vehicle. There is one other domestic auto manufacturer that we're not showing here, that's Tesla. And Tesla we actually do have data for this year. It's in the average range. It's doing a little bit better than the others if you look at it in terms of their averages. And we actually have over 600 responses from Teslas. So we have 600 actual vehicles. We have people fill out exactly what's going wrong with these cars. There are some problems. We've seen problems with like the door handles not operating the way, and if you've driven a Tesla, sometimes they're infuriating. But what's very interesting about it is that giant battery. We hadn't a single report of any problem with powertrain. The battery, the control modules, or the motor. So taking a deeper dive into General Motors and looking at seeing what's up and down. So you're going to see some more of this. So if you look at the left side there, actually that's the list of 28 brands and how they rank. And what I've done is highlighted the brands from General Motors. So you can see they're kind of spread out. GMC is doing the best. They've improved some this year. They're doing it very much from the strength of older models that are mature in their life cycle. The bugs have been kind of worked out. Buick is also doing quite well, and they've actually improved this year. And this is a very interesting point, that the new Encore and the Verano are above average in their first years. So what we generally see in terms of any type of new vehicle is often when you redesign a car or a new car gets introduced, it's actually has some growing pains, and it's only later in its life cycle that you wind up getting very good reliability. They're actually doing some of these new vehicles pretty good right off the bat. Chevrolet is kind of holding its own, kind of lower mid-pack, and the Cruze is below average. But some of the older models are doing better, and it's mid-pack. Cadillac really took a dive this year. There's a few reasons for it. I don't want to say that Cadillac is just falling apart, because they're not. One of the things that hurt them is Q. So the XTS does have much worse than average reliability. Much of that does have to come from Q. But the other story about Cadillac is the CTS. The CTS last year really helped Cadillac have a very good reliability record because it was late in its product cycle, the bugs were worked out. The CTS is not in the calculations this year for Cadillac because it's been redesigned. Looking at Chrysler. Chrysler is a bit of a mixed bag as well. We're seeing some improvements in Chrysler and Ram, and I highlight the 300C because this was a car that I talked about last year. That car we really enjoyed. It's a great entry, but unfortunately it was below average. They've improved that, so now it's a recommended model and a really great vehicle. The Ram, they've worked out some of the issues with the diesel and the heavy-duty trucks, so they narrower average. Jeep has had some issues. We saw the Grand Cherokee V6 now going below average, which is a shame because that's a really nice vehicle that we'd like to recommend. Some of that's associated with, they changed some of the control units, they changed some infotainment in that car. We're seeing some issues. And Dodge kind of held their own, again, pretty lower, but when you look at some of the new entries, so you look at the Dart, we actually found that the 2-liter was above average and the 1.4T was below average. And in fact, the 2-liter Dart was actually the most reliable domestic model that we saw this year. One more from Chrysler, it's Fiat, and they have dropped much below average. So in their first year, they were looking better, more exposure out there, more problems. Ford is right at the bottom. just above Mini. Mini is the least reliable manufacturer. And Ford was also in the same spot last year. And in this slide, I'm trying to show several things that are going on. Up at the top, 62% of Ford and Lincoln models are much worse than average. So there's a lot of models that are not very good. In fact, the only model that was above average was the F-150 3.7 V6. So again, kind of the strength of kind of the older models with an older engine. The newer models have replaced the older reliable models. So I mean, 5 years ago, Ford was really on the rise. In fact, 2 or 3 years ago, Ford was almost up there with the Japanese competition. We're seeing these models just gone away. I mean, the old Escape, the old Fusion, even the old Focus, they're just gone and they're replaced completely ground up, greenfield redesigns without the carryover engines, without carryover transmissions, without carryover platforms. And this is causing a lot of problems in terms of reliability. There are 7 of the 34 Ford and Lincoln models that have average reliability, including, again, some older models, the Ford Mustang and the Expedition. The C-Max, much below average. In fact, the C-Max Energy was the worst reliability of any vehicle we have on survey of the 2013 models. And we're still seeing problems with electronics and transmissions. With my Ford Touch, we're still seeing problems with that, and it's just spreading because they're putting these systems in more and more vehicles across the lineup.